say that for the first time in ages, we have more women than men.
No.
Important recognition, so I will ask my fellow colleagues on the women leaders in this group to stand up for a moment, and we give them a round of applause for their leadership. And now we'll start the panel. Patty Sohar will lead this panel and will introduce the speakers. Patty?
You can forward the first panel. We're going to get to our panelists in just a moment, but I did want to introduce them. Kristen Haffert, co-founder of Mind the Gap, and Antonietta Restucia, a PhD student in biomedical engineering here at the University of Florida, and a recent graduate of our Empowering Women in Technology Startups program, EWITS, which we're going to be talking about, and we're very proud of. So if you can forward the slide. You got to hit a slide again. Picture is worth 1,000 words. This was last year's, or 2016's cover of Newsweek. Celebrating innovation, 60 years of innovation. It's a lot of men, not a lot of diversity. So I won't belabor the point. I think the picture speaks for itself. And if you can forward the slide. While we certainly have had an increase in women participating in innovation, there is still a long way to go. And part of the problem that a lot of people don't recognize, the challenge is, you have parity more and more now. You have women participating. Here we have, as you said, the first time you have more women or an equal number of women participating in ACE, and as well in undergraduate programs, in corporate life, you have parity. However, what happens is as you increasingly go through the pipeline, that parity really quickly starts to grow. This is a chart of a corporate pipeline. As you see, as we get up to the C-suite, we're down to 19%. The numbers on the bottom are for 2015. So they're ticking up a little bit each year, but not nearly as fast as we need them to. It's not just industry and corporate as well. Academia. These are the number of patents. Now, this is don't worry about reading this. I just wanted to, again, frame the conversation for you. And another reason I wanted to bring this up, this is a report that just came out. It's called Gender in the Global Landscape. It's from Elsevier. They did this massive research report on 28 countries. So many of your countries, I know this is an international audience, are represented here. So I know you maybe can't see on the side, but a lot of Latin America, really the whole globe. And they did 2 cohorts. They looked at 2 time frames to compare them. So it's a really fascinating study. And why I want to point this out, the purple is the number of women and the green is the number of men. And these are 2 different cohort time frames. That's 1996 and 2011, so, or 1996 to 2000 and 2011 to 2015. So, again, numbers are up, there are increases happening, but they're still so minute. It's still not enough that we need. In order to get gender parity in patenting, does anyone want to take a guess when we'll have that, according to research that came out from the Institute of Women in Public Research? When do you think, if we go according to the current levels of participation, when will we get gender parity in patenting? Anyone? 2092. So hopefully we want to do some things before that. And if you can, next slide. So this happens as well, SBIR programs. If you look at the bottom, foster and encourage participation, innovation, entrepreneurship by socially and economically disadvantaged. SBIR is all about diversity. They struggle. And they even have a focus now on getting more diversity in women, and they're very much underrepresented. About 13% of applications in phase 1 were from women, just applications, and then even less in phase 2. I'm going fast with these slides, I know, but I really want to get to our panelists. The picture of that woman was someone from our incubator next door who actually did get a successful SBR1. But what I want to point out here is now here are those Elsevier numbers again, framed differently. In the number of researchers, there's a lot more equity. If you see those numbers, it's about women comprise more than 40% of researchers in many of the regions. So we're represented in terms of at certain levels in research, in entry-level positions in corporations. if you go to the next slide, the same thing, scholarly output of research. Women are also representing in terms of putting the research out there, but we're missing the boat somewhere in taking that next step into leadership, in innovation. Again, both corporate and academic. So that's what we really want to focus on talking about today, some strategies. There's a lot of conversation right now, which is fantastic, about getting more parity and having those discussions, and that's great, but we also want to say we need real strategies to address this. It's not enough to just having the woman in the workforce. There's something else that needs to be done. So if you go to the next slide. And hit the button one more time. So what's holding women back? What are some of the barriers that you think is a barrier for women taking that next step into those leadership positions? I have t-shirts for people who are giving me answers.
Culture.
Networking, yes. Research, and this is all research-based. Women have less opportunity for networks. And one thing I'll point out is, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Culture.
Culture, yeah, there's biases in the system, there's social norms, and that is internal and external. That sometimes is put on by other people, and it's something that we grow up with, okay? And I just want to say as well, this is all a spectrum. When I say male, female, man, woman, gender, that doesn't mean that this is every woman and that men don't have these challenges as well, but, you know, data shows more often than not, these are more challenges for women. What are some others? Work-life balance, someone said children, but still, in the most cases, women are, again, proportionally doing more of the child rearing, work, stay at home. Any others? Okay, I'll give you a break. And I said I had t-shirts giving out, so for those people who answered, fight over sizes, let me know later, extra, I don't know, who gave me answers? Change sizes later. I should, before I do that though, these are shirts from our Empowering Women Technology Startups program, which we'll be talking about later, so that's, you can wear them proudly and give them around. So, you go to the next slide, please. Some of the barriers, confidence, perfection, and this is an interesting one. It's not that women aren't confident, and especially when you get into corporate culture, these are a lot of women who are educated, professional, but it's that perfectionism. I always use the example, was the former assistant director over at the Innovation Hub. I didn't introduce myself. Up until about a week ago, when I am now taking over women's entrepreneurship programming. But when I used to say to companies in my building, if you need 5 things. I have some investors coming in. You need 5 things to pitch. Again, more often than not, the male founders would come up to me with 2 of the 5 and say, I'm in, I'm ready. A woman could have 4 of those 5 and just say, oh, I'm not ready. And it's not that she wasn't confident, it's just that that perfectionism tends to be more gender biased for women. I need to check all the boxes, I need to have everything right. If you're an entrepreneur, it's not gonna happen. Lack of training, lack of networking, as you mentioned, lack of role models. Women tend to be more risk averse. Life balance choices, that self-initiative, waiting to be asked versus taking that initiative. And this is a big one, that women don't self-identify as entrepreneurs often. So if you're thinking about marketing to women, you need to maybe tailor that marketing different. And I'll talk about that when we get into the EWITS program a little bit more. And again, we talked about bias, that implicit bias. I know I'm going very quickly, but I really want to get over to my panel. But I did want to kind of frame this issue for you before we start having the conversation about specific initiatives. I think I'm done. If you forward it one more time. Oh, lastly, 2 more slides. I really want to highlight the fact again of why this is such an important issue. Diversity drives inclusion. And again, that's not just gender diversity, that's diversity in all phases. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. But it's important. If you forward to the next slide. There are real factors that research that shows that diversity can ultimately improve your bottom line. Diverse companies perform better, 53%. Women-led startups have a higher rate of return based on less investment. And finally, the OECD shows that closing the gender gap could increase the GDP by up to 10% by 2030. So these are real economic imperatives. And this isn't a zero-sum game. If I get more women patenting and more women creating companies in economic development, it doesn't mean I'm taking jobs away from anybody else. It's not like all the men don't have jobs anymore. It's just that we are creating more inventions, more companies, more growth. So, important thing to keep in mind. I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to now go to our panel and stop talking myself. If I go over here, can you hear me? Anyone not hear me? Great, okay, be a little closer up here. So, again, I'm going to start, Kristen, with you. Move over here. So Kristen, as I said, is the co-founder of Mind the Gap, and I'm going to let you talk a little bit more about Mind the Gap and segue in from my illuminating data on gender research. So I'm just going to have you go ahead.
Thank you, Kathy. And thank you to the OAS and Commerce and the university for having me down. So I did democracy building programs for many, many years in about 120 countries and in some of the countries that are represented here. And I launched a women's program to really cultivate women leaders in the political sector. And as I traveled around the world, I saw anecdotal patterns of how women, of the impact women had on public policy and on politics. Very tangible results. And so after about 15 years of doing that, I decided that the data was so compelling on the business side that can everyone hear me? Yes. Okay. The data is so compelling that on the business side that we know that women have an impact in business, I moved to advising private sector organizations and companies through Mind the Gap, our new company that we started about a year and a half ago, to help them understand that it is a strategic imperative to have gender-inclusive workforces. And so, as you just saw, the data shows companies that have no women on their boards compared to at least three, have a higher return on equity, a higher return on invested capital, and a higher return on sales. Companies with boards of more than 30% women show at least 6 points higher productivity. So the numbers are there, and the data is really compelling. So I thought, okay, well, if I can get the private sector to understand this and to have more women in leadership and involved in the conversations of reaching their target audiences and their consumers, then I won't be, an old lady in my rocking chair who spent 40 years working on gender equality with no results. So we work with Amazon, National Geographic, and other companies to help them see the bottom line impact. So we go in and we don't say this is the right thing to do because the companies don't care, and what's the right thing to do? They care about money. So we talk to them about the actual results that they will have if they have more women on the boards, more women in leadership, and more women on the teams. And what we found, there's not a lot of research at the kind of team and management level. There's increasing research on this, and it's global research. It's by Forbes, by Thomson Reuters, by PricewaterhouseCoopers, Deloitte, global studies that show this. So we bring that data to them, and then we say, if you want to retain and attract the female talent, you have to create a culture and an environment where they want to be. So there's a big myth in the United States that women leave, well, actually globally, that women leave their jobs because they have children. They don't leave because they have children. They leave because they know that they can't go back to the same place and be as effective and their same kind of badass self, because they know that the environment won't support that. And so, we really work on culture change and helping people understand that if you want to retain and attract female talent, which will make you more money, you need to create an environment where people feel belonging. And we talk a lot about diversity and inclusion, but now belonging is really a word that a lot of the tech companies are using. And we're working with Facebook and energy companies and a lot of different folks, and they're on different parts of the spectrum in terms of their interest in this. But now you're here at a very interesting time because we're having this crisis of sexual harassment, and now the companies are panicking even more because they realized that they didn't have a culture of belonging. In fact, they had an abusive culture, and now we know why these institutions, aren't as successful. So the companies are kind of freaking out a little bit, and we're getting a lot of calls saying, okay, what do we do? Because traditionally this has been dealt with in a crisis management sort of way, when companies make mistakes rather than in a proactive way. And so when you see there's a big beer company, for example, and I'll just give you these two examples and then I'll stop. There was a beer company that they had different slogans on their beer bottles, just like the Coke cans, you say mom or family. So they had these slogans that were coming out over the course of 2 years. And last year, there was a lot of research came out on the fact that we have a lot of sexual assault on our campuses. And we're taught from college, no means no. It's a terminology, I don't know if I can't remember if in Latin America and other places, but no means no is like something we're taught as young women and young men. And so the beer label that came out on the beer bottles right around the same time as all this news on the sexual harassment on college campuses said the best thing to help you say yes for the night. And so I looked and I saw that this went through 5 levels of decision making in this major beer brand, and they only have 1 woman on the board, and they also had decreased the percentage of women in the company had gone from 23% down to 16%. So and that was a costly mistake. Women and men were told about the brand and their brand. People were very upset with this, and they had to pull the bottles. So from the CEO's time to pulling these bottles, this was a catastrophe. And there are worse ones, but just to give you an example, that's when the crisis happens, and that's when people care. But last night I went into the hotel and I saw a makeup remover, and I've never, in a 5-star hotel or in a dumpy hotel, seen makeup remover. And I thought, this company definitely has some women. I mean, that was a woman's idea to put makeup remover in the bathroom. But do I want to go back to that hotel now? Yes, because I think that was, that's useful to me. So that's a very silly little example compared to the beer thing, but their brand value to me is higher because they're actually thinking about me as well. So we have different lives, we go in different places, we have different hormones, our brain chemistry is different, we do different jobs as men and women, sometimes, but because we're different, we need that representation and that diversity in the companies actually translates to more money and more brand value.
Great, thanks. But I'm very excited to have one of our recent graduates here. The program started in 2012, and it came out of the realization when we opened our fabulous technology incubator that we didn't have any male CEOs in the building. And I'm sorry to say we still are not near at parity, but realized early on that, okay, what are we going to do about this? Got a team together, did a lot of research, and developed this program that we continue to refine over the years, but we're very proud of it. It's been very successful. We just ran our 6th cohort again, which Antonetta was part of. I'm going to let her tell you about it. So if you can maybe give them an overview of the program, and then also about why you decided to join and your takeaways from it.
Yeah. So hello everyone. Thank you for the invitation to be here and share my experience. As Kathy said, I am a graduate student here at the University of Florida, finishing up my PhD in biomedical engineering. And in my lab, we develop technologies, we do protein therapeutics, and until I came to EWIX, it was, I was focusing on my research, living as a rat lab, basically just working in there, not coming out of there at all. But my professor, actually my mentor, invited me to look into this program. So what EWITS is an empowering women information in technology startups. So it's a program that you, 10-week long program where you are put into a group, work with other women, and you have mentors in the group, and through each week, you basically learn about what it would take to take a technology that has just been patented and what it would take it all the way to commercialization. So the end goal of it is to develop a business plan from a technology that has been patented from the university. So at the beginning, you give you're given the basic concepts of commercialization that I was completely unaware of. So what is value proposition? How do you understand your market? How do you do market analysis? How do you look at your competitors? Move all the way through the chain, understand also the financials, what it will take to start your company, where do you get your money from, where will be your funding coming from, and things like that. So at the end, you give basically, you turn in a business plan that you come up with your group of 5 or other women, that together with a mentor you put together, and then you go into a pitch competition. So you have basically a woman, 3 or 4 women investors, very successful women in the city, and they give you basically pitch your idea to them, explain what not only your technology, but you have to do to develop it. So, and they, at the end, they give you feedback on what your strengths are and what you should improve on. So for me, it was an eye-opening experience. Before I did the program, I was really thinking, I'm really good at the science. I can give you everything about these proteins and about these technologies. But when it came to what it would take to take this protein to the clinic, it's like, oops, I stopped there. I have no idea what it would take to do that. But after going through this program, it has been a very empowering experience, because I feel like at this point, I actually had conversations with my professors about having a startup company with 2 of these technologies that we have developed in the lab, and kind of like what it will take to put a team together, have a startup, considering having the innovation hub as one of our houses, and then take this technology, what it would take to go into clinical trials, and finally all the way to, if it's successful, to commercialize it. So.
Thank you so much. I think another aspect I want to have you talk about with the program is, in addition to the hard skills that the participants learn, we also really focus on those barriers I talked about earlier. So that's a big component. This isn't just an entrepreneurial program where you're learning about how to make a business plan, investor pitch. We focus a lot on the softer skills, and I'd like you to talk about that. I'd also like to say that this program, we do keep it female focused and oriented, so the mentors are women, the speakers that come in are women, the participants are women. We understand that that's not a realistic bubble to keep people in forever, and when they graduate from the program, we have every intention of moving them into the next stage, but we have found that it provides a safe space for women to build their comfort level in asking questions and learning as a team. And the dynamic research has just shown is if there are men on that team, the dynamic shifts, and women don't maybe step up as more. And we've done a lot of data. We're very excited. We just finished a big external evaluation, and what the evaluator found was that women really found that they had to step up and take those leadership roles. And after graduating from EWITS, even though they may not go ahead and start companies, and maybe right away, maybe down the line, it has fundamentally, and I guess I'll have you talk about this, change their attitude and perception about their own skills, increase their awareness. Even if they say in academia, they say that now I understand, as you said, better the process for, I'm not just doing a research paper. How does this relate to industry? How can I better target my market? And even if they stay in their own companies, they take more innovation, more leadership roles. They're more innovative. So there's a lot of benefits. And what we're also finding is the seed program. They may not quit their job the next day and start a company, but they're coming back 2-3 years later and saying, all right, now I'm ready to start a company. So will you speak a little bit more about the softer barriers? And then I know we want to save time for questions and answers, and we're probably running short here. So If you will share some of your thoughts on that briefly. And
Absolutely. So yeah, I said it was a 10-week long program. It was about 2 hours once a week that we would meet. The first hour was really focused on a speaker would come into the room and she would talk. Every week was something different. So the first one is talking about the barriers, being aware of what the barriers were. But then the other one was about communicating your ideas. Really a lot about self-confidence. A lot of mentoring went into here. So in my group, we had this mentor. She didn't know she was doing all this, but in the meantime, she wasn't only teaching me about commercialization, but she was being a role model at this point, giving me the confidence to speak, to value my ideas, and to explain them to an audience. So I don't know if I'm missing.
I know we're conscious. There's so much more I want to ask both of you, but I know I'm conscious of the time. So let me stop here. Open up to questions at this point, if there are any. If not, I'm happy to keep asking the panelists questions, but I know you guys are on a pretty tight timeline. So are there any questions that either of the panelists can answer?
I'm wondering if you're seeing a change in mind from corporations, especially from the male population, and how to address this, because what I feel is that usually we speak to ourselves, and now we need to shift that to male being exposed to our needs and our topics. So wondering if this crisis is kind of pushing that agenda, and you're seeing from CEOs and from leadership from corporations that intention of actually educating a holistic population about this matter.
Thank you. I think it's a great question, and I would say it's not going fast enough. But the main actors we're usually talking to are men, so they are trying harder to understand how to promote more women and how to retain the talent. Because if you're a company, you want to be globally attractive, right? You want to be competitive. You want to be innovative. You want to be able to move quickly. And so, in Europe, they have quotas for the boards. For women and men, for women on boards. Germany just passed one, and there's some others. Other organizations are similar to the support that EWITS gives. You see women in the companies having their own kind of groups, just like there's an African American group or a Latino group, and it's important for them to have those spaces to talk to each other, to support each other. But then again, that bubble isn't real, and so I think one of the things we've helped companies do is pay more attention to their employee resource groups, is what they're usually called here. And so what happened with one of the major tech companies that we're working with is they call their African American resource group their Black resource group, and the Black resource group said, we actually can't find something that they needed, it's something about one of their products. They said, this doesn't reflect us, this doesn't. And so that was a huge moneymaker for this tech company, because all of a sudden they had leveraged the diversity within the company in order to do this. So it's a slow process. I think the sexual assault stuff is really going to amplify the efforts, and hopefully they won't just be crisis management, but also prevention. But I will just add, I think one of the other things that men and women are trying to understand is we know that we behave differently. And you have these books on how men and women should get along in heterosexual marriages, but then you don't have that for the workplace. And men are more higher risk takers typically. Women are less of risk takers typically. A lot of people say that the financial crisis might have never happened if you had more women in those board groups. So we do things differently, and you need that balance. And that balance is what creates the innovation, and it creates checks and balances, just like we have in our judicial or democratic institutions writ large. And so, or hopefully, we're moving towards, not here anymore. But so anyway, they're starting to understand the different leadership differences and how that's valuable, and we're trying to help quantify that too.
I wish we had more time for questions. Unfortunately, we're out of time. I will say if you would like any more additional information on EWITS or our additional programming, feel free to reach out. As I said, our website is available. I think you have our contact information. We're happy to give you a call afterwards. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to ACE for including us in this in the chamber. Thank you all for visiting Gainesville and learning about gender. I'm going to leave you with one final thought. 2/3 of the purchasing power, where the money flows to, who does the shopping? Women. And a lot of times, even when men are shopping, again, I'm making generalizations, but your wife tells you to go get this, or your mother or something. So a lot of that economic spending is directed for women. So why not include them in the process of in developing those products that you're going to buy, and then marketing those products and commercializing them. So thank you all so much, and I hope you enjoy your stay in Gainesville.